Okay, dude. So, what is your conclusion, man?
Of the over-reporting and the
Yeah, yeah.
under-reporting.
Reporting.
Yeah, I think it's false that the deaths are being over-reported, and I think it's true that the deaths are being under-reported.
The deaths are being underreported. So what makes you think that?
Sure. So I linked in chat here. This is an analysis from the New York Times using the CDC uh, death statistics.
Prediction.
This isn't a prediction. This is using data that's already been released by the CDC, and they're finding that uh, what's the term? Let me think of the term. One sec. There's a specific term. Oh, they're called excess deaths. So the excess deaths are larger in this time period than the averages of the previous 5 years, which basically the inference from that is that the coronavirus deaths are being underreported either due to lack of testing, lack of enough medical personnel, people dying in their own homes. For example, New York increased the death toll by a couple of thousand to account for the averages, which were between 200 and 300 people dying in their homes due to suspected COVID. That's for example.
You're saying that that was a myopic or
Myopic. So
myopic.
the myopic argument is the argument of the over-reporting of the deaths, and the over-reporting
Why?
of the
Why?
deaths argument
Why
is
is
what
it? Why is it myopic?
right. So myopic just means basically very narrow-sighted. So in other words, that they're not taking the broader context into account when they're making the conclusion that the COVID deaths are over-reported. And the argument that
Whoa,
I've
whoa, whoa,
seen
whoa, whoa,
being
whoa,
made,
whoa, 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 whoa. What is the criterion you're using to determine whether something is being over-reported or under-reported?
uh, so I'm looking to see what the arguments, the reasoning, and any studies and facts that are presented. So I looked at
No,
the
no, no.
facts.
You
And
didn't understand my question.
that's my criterion right there. I look at the arguments, I look at the facts, I look at the reporting, I look at
No, no, no.
expert consensus.
Okay, that's fine, but that wasn't, an answer to my question.
Okay, can you ask your question again then?
Yeah. Okay. If you're going to claim that something is being over-reported, right? What is the criterion to determine that something is being over-reported or under-reported?
I guess it depends on the people making the claim.
No. Okay. Chum, let me ask you something. If you're going to claim that someone is tall, you're going to have to use some standard, right? Now
Uh-huh.
I'm asking, what is the standard you're using to determine whether someone is tall or small? And you are supposed to give me a criterion, which is a standard. To say,
Yeah.
oh, if they reach this,
Yeah,
beyond
okay.
this is tall, below this is low. Okay, right?
Wait, I,
This is
I,
what I'm asking.
I, I already did this. So what I was describing to you was the standard relative to excess deaths on average of over the previous 5 years.
Ah, God damn it, chum. Okay, let me then
The
tell
excess,
you.
excess,
Let me tell you. You're not allowed to say, listen, pay attention. If they are over-reporting, right? What does that mean? That means that they are inserting deaths from COVID that are not supposed to be deaths from
yes,
COVID, right? And
yes,
that inflates the number, right?
yes.
Now, the fact that they're doing that, right, it is immediately over-reporting, right? Do you understand?
If it's true that they're doing that, then it's also true that they're over-reporting.
Of course.
Right, and I'm saying that it's false that they're not doing that, and that the arguments and the evidences that I've seen given to support that conclusion are very easily explained by other basic facts, which are very easy to find.
Okay, and you were saying that the guidelines, you were talking about the guidelines. What specifically said or what does the guidelines say
Yeah, sure.
that allowed over-reporting?
Well, what the guidelines say that people are claiming that allows for over-reporting is, let me see if I could find the quote here. So here, okay. So the quote is, if COVID-19, okay, so this is guidelines issued on April 2nd. This is from CDC, guidance to public health officials on the certification of COVID-19 deaths. This is oftentimes, from what I've seen, this is referred to as a 7 or 9 page document, and this is quote unquote exposed by the Illinois governor, telling hospitals and state officials how to report these deaths. Okay, so this is the 7 page document, and I'll post it here in chat for you. And I'm going to pull a quote from it, and the quote is, quote, if COVID-19 played a role in the death, this condition should be specified on the death certificate. In many cases, it is likely that it will be the underlying cause of death, as it can lead to various threatening conditions such as pneumonia and acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS. In these cases, COVID-19 should be reported on the lowest line used in Part 1 with the other conditions to which it gave rise listed on the lines above it. And then it says that should should no test be available for COVID-19 in cases where cases where they're suspected of dying from it. The quote here is that if circumstances are compelling within a reasonable degree of certainty, and that if a definitive diagnosis cannot be made, but it is suspected or likely, it is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as quote probable or quote presumed.
Uh-huh. What else?
That's it. That's the relevant quotations, and I'd like to.
What about what about what they say was, hey man, it doesn't matter if you died because of some other thing. If you had COVID at the time, then it is going to count as a COVID death.
Yeah, so that's part of what I'm saying is something that's being taken out of context. So what the
No, 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 no. Not taken out of context. Don't lie. Don't lie. It
But
is within the context.
what do you think the context of that statement is?
It is about how they are, counting the deaths from COVID. So if
That's
it
not true.
wasn't the main cause, it doesn't matter. If they did have COVID at the time that they died, they is count as a COVID death. This is the context.
Yes. Yeah, that's consistent with exactly what I'm saying. And I'm saying that
No.
well, don't just say no. Let me explain, and then you can say no, and you can say why it's a no. So you've given the quote, and also this was something which was echoed by President Trump's health advisor, the woman that always comes out and wears the scarf. So if this is something that's being used to inflate COVID-19 deaths, then President Trump and his administration are in on it somehow. But I don't think that that's true, and the reason that I don't think that's true is
Why?
because of the previous quote that I read out, which is that um so if COVID-19 played a role in the death, and this is quoting from the CDC guideline, this condition should be specified on the death certificate. So if COVID-19 is playing a role in the death, in many cases, it is likely that it will be the underlying cause of death, as it can lead to various life-threatening conditions, such as pneumonia and acute respiratory distress syndrome. In these cases, COVID should be reported on the lowest line, used in Part 1 with the other conditions to which it gave rise, listed on the lines above it. So they're saying that COVID-19 might not be the direct cause of death, but it can be an underlying cause of death, and the direct cause of death can be conditions, diseases, medical issues which it gave rise to. And that's
Of
that's
course.
and
So
that's I think
the
the
fact of the
proper
matter,
that's the proper
okay,
interpretation.
okay. So the fact of the matter is that and what's happening, and I don't know if you've seen the videos of people reporting, what they are incentivized to do, which is to report, right, deaths as COVID, right? So what they're trying to do with this, right, is to actually justify, right, a particular state of the country, right, in order for them to keep and continue to push down the lockdowns, right? Now,
Well, that's no big deal of motivation. We could talk about that.
let me
That's
tell
a
you why.
separate,
Let me
that's
tell
a
you
separate
why. Let
issue.
me tell you. Let me ask you that. Let me ask you that. Okay. So, what, would you say that if a series of tactics are being used, they're clear tactics, and all of those tactics lean towards a particular direction, don't you say, or wouldn't you say that that direction is part of something that it is beneficial to the people trying to push that direction, or not?
It could be.
What do you
It could.
mean?
So like if uh if I want to eat if I want to eat a really good lunch, and I go out and I buy a sandwich, I could be it could be a benefit to the restaurant. It could be a benefit to the person making the bread. It could be a benefit to the person doing, making the cheese, whatever. But that would be a secondary consequence to the enjoyment and to the health benefit of eating the lunch. So,
No, but that's not my point. My point is the following. So let's say, for instance, you have data, right? And when you pick and choose data in order for you to interpret the data, right? You're going to do it in a way that it is going to unveil your interest, right? I mean, would you agree with that?
if you're fudging the data,
Yeah.
then you're probably doing it because of a certain interest. But uh, that's that's a hypothetical, and I think we're talking about something which is not hypothetical.
No. That is not a hypothetical. So let me explain. So you have, the circumstance that we're going through right now, right? And you have different circumstances, such as, for instance, um, the spread of the disease, right? We know it is spread wide and far. Do
Yeah,
we agree?
yeah,
Okay,
and
so
I would
that
even
is a
say
scientific fact,
I,
right?
I I would even say that it's spread much more widely than is being reported, both in this country
Of
and in
course.
many other countries where testing is not
Yeah,
widely
100%.
widely going on.
Exactly. So we know this. We know this. This is just the fact. Okay, that's one thing.
Yeah, it is.
However, right? However, what the authorities are doing, they're not considering that, and they are considering the cases, the reported cases, or the cases that they have a highly likelihood from being, from having the COVID, right? So they are using that number to calculate the mortality rate, right?
Oh, you're talking about the mortality right now?
No. I am giving you an example of what they do, right? And I'm trying to set a trend for you to see, what the
Yeah,
intentions are.
they can only calculate the mortality rate based off of people who were tested or likely exhibiting symptoms of it versus the number of deaths.
Of course. So what they are not saying, or for the fact, bringing to the table, is the fact that the mortality rate is much more lower, assuming that a lot of people are fucking, they already contracted the disease, right? So if it is the case that there is a lot of more, a wider contagious, or population that is
Do you
contagious,
mind if I just say something about that? So
yeah,
we haven't done widespread testing. From the testing that we have done, we've seen that it's pretty darn widespread. I don't think it's right to extrapolate data taken from, let's say, an urban area, which is a city, densely populated area, to people who are living in a rural area. So like if 20% of people in New York City, test positive for the virus, I don't think it's fair then to extrapolate and say that 20% of New Yorkers have the virus.
no. But you agreed with me that it was more spread and far and wide than there is reporting on.
Than the official numbers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the idea is the following: you have this knowledge, you have the knowledge that it is more spread, which would mean that it is less likely, that less deadly, right? Yet they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're using the facts that they have in calculating the mortality rate based on those numbers, which we know is misleading. This is what I'm trying to tell you. So, if they are doing this, right, then you would have to only say, okay, whoa. Why are you choosing to, give the statistic that is more alarmist than the one that it is more realistic, right?
Well, because we don't have. Well, I don't think it's more alarmist. I think that the realistic data is to take what we have as information and
No,
not.
no, 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 no. Come on, Chum. Don't be a liar
Literally,
now. Don't be
I'm
a
not.
fucking liar now.
That's not lying. But I could say
What?
that's literally not lying. If I'm giving you my opinion, it's not lying.
Oh, so you're saying that this is the actual case? Oh, so you must only speak
I
for what
don't.
you have in mind,
I'm.
even though it is pretty known and scientific that it is the case that it is much lower, right? Even though you know this, you say, "Oh, no, 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 we must speak for the data we have." Come on, man, that's
I think that the mortality rate of between 1.5 to 5 to 3.5% has been like a decent bar.
well, that's your problem. Now, what we know and what we actually know about this is that it is spread, widely spread, and that given the fact that it is more likely spread than we actually think, the mortality rate is much, 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 much lower, right?
Well,
So,
I have a study for my mortality rate.
but here comes a
You have a
problem.
study.
Here comes a problem, Chum. Here comes a problem. That when you're choosing and cherry picking data in order for you to fudge the numbers that you're
Wait,
trying to give,
it's not
do
cherry
you
picking.
affect reality? Let me tell you
You
how.
can't call
So
it cherry picking. Using all of the
In
data
New
available.
York, I'm sorry, man, I was speaking. In New York, right, there has been a spike on fucking, COVID deaths. However, the the other statistical data when it comes to death from old elderly people, it is decreasing. So what that means is that they are actually taking COVID, right? A regular statistic of people being dying because of the age of conditions or whatever, right? And that average is just dropped. However, the COVID just rose. And you're saying, hey, dude, I mean, this doesn't seem right, right? Why? Because they are attributing the death of those people to the COVID, which is not fucking the case, right?
I already
Now,
ran through that.
it is not the case. So if you're going to say, well, these are the guidelines and this is how we do it, that's fine, but it is false. It is not giving you a proper representation of what is actually the case
Well,
in
look,
reality.
if okay, well, you've talked for a while, so if you're just going to like if I'm going to pull up the CDC reporting guidelines and that's what's being cited as the reason that the deaths are being overreported
Which
and
is a
and that's
fact.
well, look, the claim is that it's being reported. That's the claim. Now
It's
the
being
now
overreported.
hold on,
Yes.
stop. You're interrupting me a lot, and you went on for a while there, and I'm just trying to respond to a couple of the things that you said, which I think are objectionable.
Well, at least, if you're going to say that I said something, say it properly. Because if you're going to
I
claim
did.
that I said something I didn't, then I'm gonna enjoy.
You said you said that the deaths are being overreported. That's all I
Overreported.
said.
Yes.
That's all I
Yes.
said. You said. That's all I said. Okay.
That's what I clarified.
So
Overreported. Yes.
that's your claim. Now, if all the sources and all the justifications for that claim go back to complaints about the CDC reporting guidelines, and I show
No.
you and I show you and I show you that in those guidelines they're perfectly reasonable in reporting complications from COVID as being COVID deaths, then that defeats that argument unless you
That's
have
incorrect.
something else to
Okay,
justify
okay, okay, okay,
over-reporting.
dude. Okay, I have something else. So, if you want this citations and
Okay.
whatnot, I'm gonna give it.
Can you just make a note of it because I have two other things that I want to get to. So just very
Go
briefly,
ahead.
you said that the mortality rate is cherry picking, but cherry picking is when you take a specific subset of a group that's not representative of the whole, and then say that that is representative of the whole. And in the
What?
mortality, that's what cherry picking is.
That's incorrect.
No, that's what. So cherry picking is when you take a portion of it which agrees with
Yes, a
you,
partial.
and then
Yes,
say that
that's it.
that portion represents the whole. That's what. That's literally what I just read.
No, it is the
I
same thing. You could, as long as you're cherry picking, you're cherry picking. That means that you're just extracting a portion of the whole, and the whole is.
yeah.
Now, I posted,
Wait, wait,
and I
wait.
want
Let
you to
me.
tell.
I would just.
These are. Go ahead.
Okay, I would just say that. Wait, if you're going to use the loaded term of cherry picking, I don't appreciate the dishonest framing of using that phrase when the mortality rate refers to a subset of the entire data that we have available on the virus. And then for you're saying that the elderly mortality rate is decreasing. That's the same. That's something that I would like to see supported because I've seen here now that according to this article, there's up to a 15% mortality rate of COVID in people who contract it aged 80 and above.
Mm. Okay. Did you see the post
Yes.
the tweet I posted? Okay.
Yes, I've already seen this.
Okay. What does it say?
She's using. Hold on, let me. Because I saved a piece responding to this. Because
So she's saying it means technically, even if you died of clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it is still listed as a COVID death,
right, and
right?
alternate cause there is referring to, let's say you get a heart attack, or let's say you get
Yeah,
lung
of course.
failure, or let's
Yes, of
say you
course.
have,
It's going to
or let's
still
say you have blood
count as a
clotting,
COVID.
which leads
Yes.
to a stroke. Well,
Yes.
all of those things that I just referenced are things which are complications, which the underlying cause for is COVID, but they're complications which
Whoa.
arise from the COVID.
Whatever. This is
I
the
can
point,
support
right?
that.
Well, this is
Also,
the point. If that
also,
is the case, listen. No, 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 no. Shut the fucking ass. And let me tell you why your case falls apart. Because if your case really held, you wouldn't see a drop in statistics, right, of all elderly people dying, right, in a spike of fucking COVID deaths. You would see a fucking above, right? You would see the average being fulfilled, and then above the COVID deaths. Do you understand? That's what you would see and you would expect to see. However, you don't see that. You see that these people, they are gathering or taking the numbers of people who were actually going to die because of their conditions. And they are now, because, oh, it had COVID, man. Well, one to the list, and they are opening and they are inflating and hyping the COVID count, while decreasing the average of, the death of elderly people, right? And this is why it is wrong.
all right, so I'll respond to that then. So this is the second time now that you've said that we've seen a drop in elderly deaths due to COVID at the same time that we've seen an increase in COVID deaths. I'd like to see some substantiation for that. I've
Sure.
tried to do research on it. I tried to do a search for it, but I haven't found anything on that. And then aside from
Okay.
that, to respond to this specific video, this is consistent with what I've been saying, but she does a poor job. She does a poor job putting her thoughts into words, I think,
Let
and
me ask you something.
it's a clip that's being taken
Sure. I
out of
understand.
the larger context, which
I
we haven't
understand.
gone into.
I understand. Oh, there's context to this. I understand, Chum. So let me ask you something. Are you denying that what I'm saying is the case? And if so, if I demonstrate that this is the case, what would you say then? I mean, what is going to be your position if that is the case?
Well, if it's true that COVID is being over-reported, and I'm convinced that it's true, then
No,
I
no,
will
no, no,
stop
no, no.
believing that it's
If
under-reported
the
and believe.
average, okay, you asked me to substantiate an assertion that I made, right? Now you said, well, I want to see some support for that. Okay. Now, assuming that I gave you the support for that, where you can see that the average of deaths from elderly people is decreasing, right? While the count of COVID is spiking, would you agree that they're taking deaths that were supposed to be natural, and they are attributing those deaths to COVID incorrectly. Would you agree with that?
Would I agree with the conclusion that that COVID deaths are being misattributed if there's a decrease in elderly deaths at the same time as COVID deaths are spiking?
Yeah.
I don't think that that necessarily follows, but I would be very
Why?
interested to look into that. Well,
Yeah. Why? Why doesn't?
well, let's say, so think about it from a hypothetical standpoint. Let's say COVID, COVID has infected all of the elderly people, but has not infected all of the middle-aged people. You would expect to see, after the period of time in which the old people have either died or gotten better from COVID, that the elderly deaths would decrease at a certain point in time. And then as the rest of the population died or dealt with the virus, you would see an increase in deaths while at the same time seeing a decrease in elderly deaths. But I would be very interested to see that because I think that that would be an interesting piece of evidence for your argument.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say that, Chum, because let me get the information. Um, However, I wanted to know exactly what you would do if I presented this, right? For me to try even harder. Just see the videos where I said that, where I see that in the reference to it. However, Chum, what I'm trying to say is the following: it is to me what you would expect to see, right? If the COVID was so deadly, right, that it affected all sorts of people, but yet we're seeing that elderly people, right, are the ones being affected as a result of this. In the same case that you would see it with the flu, or you would see it with other diseases, right? Um, so you have an average of people dying each year, right,
Yeah.
from different diseases. Now, those are there. They're not going to change. I mean, 80,000 people died from the flu, right, last year, right, in the United States. So those numbers are there. But now that COVID is around, so oh no, no, it is from COVID. Do you understand? So other statistics are being affected while COVID is being over-reported.
Let me see if I could find this. So
Uh-huh.
last year, the CDC estimates of flu deaths from 2019 to 2020 is between 24,000 and 62,000 flu deaths. I can post you that right here. This is from the cdc.gov website directly.
What? It was a what? Repeat that.
So last year, from 2019 to 2020, in the U.S. the estimated flu deaths from last year, this is from CDC directly, is between 24 and 62,000 deaths.
But those are estimated. That what the fuck, man? You gotta give me confirmed case. It is
Yeah,
not like,
but
oh, I estimate that this happened. No, no,
it's
no.
a range. Well,
What do you
I
mean?
look the claim. Listen, so let me just be specific about this. The claim that you made is that something like 80,000 people died from the flu last year.
Yes.
I went and pulled up the statistic because it's very easy to look up, um, and that's not true. So we've already passed the maximum threshold for flu deaths last year, and um, I think that the number of COVID deaths are underreported. I think that the New York Times excess deaths analysis shows that, and that's based off of CDC reporting as well, that there were 50% higher than normal uh, excess deaths, which went unreported in the COVID death total, and this is from seven states only. But
Uh-huh.
they were some of the hardest hit, so we can say that there's at least around let's say 10,000 deaths which have gone unreported from COVID. And I
Okay,
mean,
let me check.
okay, I posted it. It's up there. It's NewYorkTimes.com interactive U.S. coronavirus death total. It's that link right. Then I also posted the CDC link there for you. So let me see if I can find the because I think there was a particularly bad year. Okay, so the flu deaths of 2017 were 80,000, and that was a particularly bad year. Says the
Oh
deadliest.
yeah, I fucked up the year, but yeah, well, okay, maybe
This was
not
the
last year, but
right. This was in 2017, and it was the deadliest flu season in more than 4 decades since 1976. So, but if you look at the yearly deaths from the flu for the past decade, none of them are more than the COVID deaths, except for the one that's like the 4 decade spike. So right here, in previous seasons, flu-related deaths have ranged from a low of about 12,000 to a high of about 56,000.
uh,
But there you go.
so okay. What's your point?
Well, the point is that talking point is false, and that talking
What talking
point,
point? What talking point?
uh, that that we experienced 80,000 deaths last year.
Well,
This
yeah, he fucked up the year. Yeah, I
it's
agree.
well
It is not a talking point.
the
It,
reason
it
is
is a fact. It is a fact that people, a lot of people die,
the
right, from flu, and a lot of people die, right, from the flu each year. That is just the fact of the matter. Now, it wasn't. Oh no 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 no! It is
the
to the point.
reason
It wasn't 8,000. It was 79,009. Okay. So that's false. No, come on, chum. Don't be fucking
what
dishonest.
I'm not. Yeah, I didn't say anything like that.
So
What I was
the
saying
spirit
specifically,
of the fucking no, shut the fuck up.
what I was
The
saying,
spirit of what I was trying to say is that it is a fact. It is a fact that a lot of people die from many different diseases each year, right? Now, it wasn't important whether it was 80 or fucking 40 or 35 or 50. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is that there is a particular number of cases
well,
each year.
what's the reason for bringing it up except for just doing a whataboutism?
Well, what do you mean about what about it? Well, it is what it is. Listen, it is a fact that a lot of people die from these diseases, right? And you have an average of people who die who are elderly, right? And you have this expected deaths, if you will, or just an average of how many people die from different diseases each year. That is just a fact of the matter. Now, what I'm saying, Chum,
But it's
is the
irrelevant.
following: it is irrelevant to what?
It's irrelevant when we're talking about COVID deaths, unless you're trying to compare them, in which case COVID is higher than the consistent average of flu deaths.
What? Why
COVID,
do you think it is irrelevant?
it's irrelevant because we're talking about something else. And if you want to make the
No,
comparison
it is
argument,
not irrelevant. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it is not. It is not irrelevant. But first of all, do you know how the procedures are? Because I know you have an assumption, John, but I don't think your assumption is correct when it comes to how do you think this they are dealing with this COVID situation, how they are treating this COVID situation, how they are managing and reporting and registering this COVID situation. I think you have a lot of assumptions, my friend. So I want to know what is it that you think they do when, for the first time, there is a COVID patient? What do they do, and how do they report it? Right? Explain to me what is your assumption about this, or if you have knowledge about it, just tell me your knowledge about it.
you're asking me how I think COVID patients are processed.
No, I'm asking you if you know.
Um,
Are reported.
yeah, I've looked into some of the reporting.
Okay, how do they do it?
Well, they'll test them if they have the test available. The thing is, like, so for example, for Florida, which is which is what I have most experience with, they actually don't give people tests unless they have fevers above 100 and they are above the age of like 60, let's say. Or you have to have a doctor's note, or you have to do it through a private system, and that's how you get reported. So, because a lot of people aren't willing to pay $3,000 out of pocket to get tested, um, and because a lot of people aren't 65 and older with fevers of 100 and higher, I think that the numbers of people who are infected and the numbers of deaths are going largely unreported, and that is given evidence to by the article I posted previously about from the Miami Herald about the state officials being uh, stopping the medical examiners from posting the full death statistic.
Yeah. So the idea is the following, Chum. There is not like a proper way for them to count the deaths of COVID. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, what they're doing is that, like you said, they are examining the symptomatology, right? Like what or the circumstances in which they are like ill or whatever, in order for them to either send them home, right, or if they are just fucked up, they are they get into the hospital, right? I mean, is this the case there in Florida or not?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part about the hospital, getting sent to the hospital?
Okay, so when people are um, they are showing some symptoms, right, and they are asked, "Hey, man, were you close to a person who traveled, whatever?" They
Oh,
have a lot
contact
of
tracing.
fucking circumstances.
You talking about contact tracing?
What?
Are you talking about contact tracing?
No,
Okay.
I am. God damn it, Chum. Oh, Chum.
Well, because I
Okay.
know we're not really doing a good job on contact tracing.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that, Chum. I am asking you if you know what they do with people who exhibit certain symptoms, right? But you're young, and they ask questions about the circumstances in which they, you know, um, are. If they know someone who traveled recently, all that good shit, right? Circumstantial um, data that would make that person more likely to have COVID than not, right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
Okay, so if they determine that this is a high, a high, likely possible COVID case, then they are recommended to get a test.
I think yeah, I think they send them to the doctor, and if the doctor recommends the test, then they'll get them a test.
Okay, now, what happens if they do have the COVID? What happens?
If they have COVID, like if they're
Yeah.
diagnosed,
Mhm.
they admit them and they offer them treatment. So like something that was given as an example is they've actually offered patients hydroxychloroquine preemptively because so many are asking for it because of Trump statements. You have to actually opt out of hydroxychloroquine treatment.
So, okay, and what happens if they start the complications? What?
Like, well, I mean, it's the same thing that happens in a hospital when they just treat you. If you're in the hospital, if you're admitted, and you have complications from COVID, they treat they treat the complications the same. Well, I wouldn't say the same way, but they treat it. I'll just say the same way that they'd treat any other COVID patient that has complications.
No, that's incorrect. So this is what I'm trying to say to tell you. Okay, since this is a very different kind of a disease, the patients that are they have COVID with complications and whatnot, they are put onto ventilators and they are just left there, right? And they are
Yeah, that's
not like
on
on
ventilator.
top of them or whatever, and they start dying, right? Now, once they die, of course they report them as COVID death, right?
Well, they
But
won't.
if you have a
Sorry, I'll just say they won't put you on a ventilator unless you're having breathing problems. But lung problems and
core,
complications is a very common symptom caused by COVID or exacerbated.
sure, sure. So okay, so basically what you're saying is the following: they are underreporting, right? With the expectation of what, according to you?
What do you mean by with the expectation? Like, what kind of expectation?
Yeah. Why do you think they're doing this? under?
What I think is the motivation for underreporting?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, well, I don't think it's relevant, but I think that if I were to guess, it's because uh, the states aren't receiving proper funding to do tests. People aren't going to the hospital because the hospitals are overstaffed, and it's just kind of like a systemic thing where if if we don't give the hospitals enough funding, they can't test enough people. If they don't test enough people, it happens that more people fall through the cracks of deaths that go unreported.
Mm. So, do you think? Oh, so you don't think there is an intention? It's just something that happens. Is this what you?
I think partly is that it's something that happens, and I think partly is is that it helps them to look better if there are less reported deaths. It doesn't look like it looks like they're going to hit their target of 100 to 240,000. So if they hit the
Mm.
low end of it, it looks like they did a better job if the estimate when they come out is 100 to 240,000. And if they hit below the 100,000, or if they hit close to that
Exactly.
100,000, then they
So
get.
let me ask you something. No, I agree with you. So let's say, for instance, we both can agree that the motivations of a particular hospital would be to underreport, not to overreport. Generally speaking, right? We agree. Or
I don't know about. I think that I
so,
think that
Chum, this is why I hate you, dude. I hate you because you're so fucking autistic,
I
right?
don't. I think that the
You
house.
you
I think that
just fucking let aside the human
literally.
factor. Oh, the data is saying I don't go further than the data, and
I'm
that's
literally
very
about to give you.
infuriating for me, dude. That's infuriating for me. Okay,
Literally
it's
about to give you the
infuriating for me.
answer. I think that the hospitals are motivated.
Jesus, man, Jesus,
I think that the
just be a
hospitals.
man, have some balls,
God,
and speak your mind. Go ahead.
Asus, I'm about to hang up. I think that the hospitals are motivated to accurately report COVID deaths.
Oh, really? Okay, so listen, man. This is the problem. You think that they are motivated to accurately report. Why do you say that? What makes you say?
Well, if they underreport it, if they underreport the COVID deaths, then the
You
death
know what, dude?
certifiers.
Yeah. You know what, dude? Just just end this call. I mean, you're garbage. Yeah. I mean, if this is what you think, that's fine. Jump. Let's see how how it
All
goes,
right,
and
I'm just giving
if
you
you
the
have this
facts.
interpretation, that's fine.
I'm just laying out the facts for you, Tasteless. No problem.
I understand, man. But
And
listen, Chum,
if you do want
I
to
just
come
want to
back
give
to
you an
me,
advice.
if you do want to come back to me with this with the decrease in elder deaths while at the same time COVID
No,
deaths are
I will.
spiking.
I will eventually. But Chum,
All right,
listen,
let's see
man.
it.
At the end of the day, listen, man. Let me tell you something. I despise people who are cowards like you, like people who will not, first of all, take into consideration the things that we actually know about reality, and they are just you use the facts as a way, like these facts, my facts. Yeah, that's fine, dude. But there are other facts of the
Facts.
matter. There are actually facts. But hey, maybe you're not getting them in a fucking report, right? You don't need for someone to tell you that I'm being rude. Where's the data? Where is the data to show that tasteless is being rude? Motherfucker, you can observe it, right? You can interpret it. You have a lot of fucking information for you to make that call, but you're not willing to make that call because you're a fucking coward, right? And these are the problems with people like you. That unless you give me data, then I don't think I can
All
make
right.
that call.
Thank you, buddy.
Jesus, man,
All right.
fuck you.
I'm
Okay, go
just
ahead.
I'm just not willing to baselessly speculate.
I understand. No, that's not baselessly. This is
Well,
what you think
I
in
view it
your
as
tiny little
baseless.
brain, chum. You think that if you're not
All right.